The eighth generation Chevrolet Corvette broke the mold with the model's first mid-engine design, but now it's getting a kind of engine that's never been in a Corvette before, at least not on the street. I'm Fox News Autos editor Gary Gastelou, and joining me in the Fox Garage to talk about the 2023 Chevrolet Corvette Z06 is Corvette Chief Engineer Josh Holder. Welcome.
Thanks, Gary. Thanks for having me.
Hey, it's great to see you. Great to see the car. Looks good in orange, perfect for Halloween.
Yeah,
a lot of changes on this from the Stingray. This is a more high-performance version of the Corvette than the Stingray. But the main thing we're talking about, I think, today is this engine. You've swapped out the 6.2-liter pushrod V8 for a 5.5-liter overhead cam V8 with something called a flat plane crankshaft. This is something you use in the Corvette race cars. For people who don't know what this is about, tell me what it is and why it's so important to have in a car like this.
So if you were to look at a normal crankshaft and a 90-degree V8, it'd be what's called a cross-plane V8. Looking down the crankshaft journals, it would look like a plus sign. So you'd see crankshaft journals 90 degrees to each other. A flat plane crank is just that. If you were to lay it down on a table, it would lay perfectly flat. The journals are opposed 180 degrees. It provides a lot of benefits, but some of the biggest ones are bay-to-bay breathing, what we call side-to-side bay-to-bay breathing. So the firing order fires one bay, then the other, one bay, then the other. Whereas on a conventional V8, there's no matter what you do with the firing order, you're always firing two consecutives out of one bay at a time. So this arrangement optimizes air breathing, especially at high RPMs. And of course, we know for an engine to make power, it needs air. It needs air to mix with fuel. Air fuel makes power. And this engine revs to 8,600 RPM with a flat plane crank.
And a typical V8 is closer to 7,000, even slower than that. They say 670 horsepower. It's the most powerful, naturally aspirated V8 engine. I guess the question then is, why aren't more engines designed like this? Why even use the cross-plane crank if this is so good?
Well, it's not a cheap alternative. So to keep vibration forces, shaking forces down in a flat plane crank, you need to make the reciprocating mass as light as possible. And so to do that, on this particular engine, we have a forged titanium connecting rod. Those are prohibitively expensive in a more high volume application. The reason it's 5.5 liter down on displacement is because we shorten the stroke. That maximizes the reciprocating mass and the inertia of that mass at high engine speed. So it comes with some challenges for those that want maybe a smooth, quiet internal combustion engine driving experience, but it's typically the opposite of what buyers of a car like this would want. They want that visceral experience. They want to be able to feel and hear the sound of the engine, and this provides that in spades.
Along with race cars, other cars that use this type of engine in the past are Ferraris, McLarens, exotics like that. You've made a number of other changes to the car to give it the kind of performance to compete with supercars along those lines. Tell me what else is different compared to the Stingray.
So just keeping with the engine for a moment, it's a dual overhead cam engine as well. That's not the first for a Corvette. We did that back in the fourth generation in the ZR1, but we brought it back in the LT6. Again, it more valves, more air, more breathing at high engine speeds. The camshafts are variable, so it's equipped with variable valve timing. It's got direct injection, a pair of 87 millimeter throttle bodies, 3-into-1 stainless steel headers. So it's all business in the engine department when it comes to performance. The rest of the car, as you can see behind me, is wider than the standard Stingray. We didn't just make the car wider for wider's sake. It's covering larger tires and wheels. So to put that 670 horsepower to the ground, we've got 345 series rear tires. So the rear tires are fully 13 inches wide. And so it allows us to stretch the bodywork around those tires. It naturally makes the openings for cooling larger. So we've added a center radiator to the front fascia to augment the outboard radiators. We've also added a radiator at the rear. So there's now 5 heat exchangers in the Z06 to help manage powertrain cooling, keep the engine at optimal performance. When you got an engine that revs that high, you want the oil kept at optimum temperature, not just the coolant. And that extra body width allows airflow into those heat exchangers.
Pretty big wing on the back there, as well as some other body add-ons as well. This is very much a track-focused car, isn't it? Not the sort of thing you buy just to go to your local cruise night in.
Yeah, the example you see behind me is a performance package on top of a performance model. We call it a Z07. So when you check that box after you order a Z06, you get the larger wing, you get the dive planes on the front fascia to go with it to help balance the car, and overall provide 734 pounds of downforce at 186 miles an hour. So it's a very track-oriented option package. It comes with Michelin Pilot Sport Cup 2 tires, so ultra high performance, summer only tire. You can, however, the standard Z06 is still every bit a grand touring machine. We kept all the cargo and utility space, so you still get 12.6 cubic feet of cargo. You get what we affectionately call the front trunk, which can hold an airline spec carry-on and the laptop bag. And then, of course, the rear trunk is large as well and holds 2 sets of golf clubs. So we still want this to be something that customers who choose to buy this can drive across the country. They can go set a track record at their local track country club and then drive back across the country in comfort.
And unlike some performance cars, you've made this available as both a coupe and a convertible.
That's right.
How is the chassis stiff enough to manage without a roof?
Yeah, so the car behind me is the retractable hardtop convertible. You can operate the top in as little as 16 seconds. It speeds up to 30 miles an hour. We engineered the body structure in the 8th generation Corvette to be an open roof car. Even coupes are open roof because the whole roof panel can be removed. So to keep the stiffness on the chassis, we call it a tunnel dominant structure, the tunnel being between the seats. So we've got a large closed section between the seats that helps carry the torsion and bending loads that most cars carry through their roof when their roof is in place. Since we can't rely on that with a convertible and a coupe, we designed the body structure to be that from the beginning. So the convertible wasn't an afterthought, it was in the plan. And a Z06 wasn't an afterthought, it was also in the plan. So the super stiff foundation that came with the 2020 Stingray has opened the performance bandwidth for us in terms of its stiffness, its efficiency, its lightweight, to manage this up-level variant like the Z06 in both coupe and convertible form.
Now, with General Motors well on its way toward becoming an all-electric brand, which is the goal for the brand now, why was it so important to do a car like this now? It seems like a lot of work to come up with a unique engine that I'm pretty sure is only ever going to be featured in the Corvette.
Well, you're right. It was a lot of work. It was a big effort. In fact, the team started working on this engine, 5-6 years ago. So it's not a recent development. It was a significant undertaking. We think this is the right car for General Motors, for Chevrolet right now. Internal combustion engines are not gone yet. This is the pinnacle of internal combustion engine performance. And while it's a low volume bespoke variant to an up-level model on the Corvette, the engine business case was planned that way from the beginning. So these are hand-built engines in Bowling Green, Kentucky, along with the rest of the car. Each individual who builds an engine builds it from start to finish. So that's an example of a way that allows us to minimize our capital investment that would normally be put into a large high volume engine program. We can use parts that are literally shared with a race car in the engine itself, and do that in a way that allows the business of Corvette to stand on its own. While the investment is significant, we work hard to minimize that and expect customers will be rewarded with its performance.
Hand-built engine, performance on par with a lot of exotic cars, 0 to 60, 2.6 seconds. You haven't announced pricing yet. This goes on sale next summer, but can we expect it to be only about as much more than the Stingray as previous Z06s are? Is this going to be a bargain?
Yeah, in terms of supercars and performance cars, Corvette has always been a value. This will not deviate from that model. We expect it to be price ladder that Corvette customers are familiar with. So we'll announce pricing as we get closer to launch, but it'll be something that people are used to.
All right, Josh Holder, Corvette Chief Engineer. Thanks for showing us the new Z06.
All right. Thanks a lot, Gary. Nice talking to you.
You too. And to read more about the car and get all the latest automotive news, head on over to foxnewsautos.com.